The news broke just after dawn, sending a seismic shockwave from Seoul all the way to Washington. It was a deal few saw coming and one that left the United States conspicuously on the outside looking in. Digital graphic, Korea-China flags linked by circuit pattern, US flag isolated. South Korea-China have just signed a landmark trade and technology pact. This isn't just another piece of paper with signatures. This is a fundamental realignment, a deliberate move to create a powerful economic corridor that doesn't need America's blessing or participation. The implications are staggering. For Donald Trump, the news was nothing short of a political earthquake. His reaction was swift and furious. The timing, September 7th, 2025, feels deliberate. It comes amid fragile supply chains and economic uncertainty. The pact promises to integrate South Korea's cutting-edge tech, semiconductors, batteries, robotics, with China's colossal manufacturing and consumer market. The goal, a self-reliant economic bloc, insulated from Washington's geopolitical whims. It's a direct challenge to the post-World War II order. Now, two of America's critical trading partners have built their own table, and America wasn't invited. More than a trade deal, a declaration of economic independence. For decades, global trade funneled through the United States via... So, what exactly is in this agreement that has caused such an uproar? At its core, the pact is a sweeping blueprint for deep economic integration. China, the world's factory, South Korea, a technological powerhouse. It's not just about lowering tariffs on goods, it does that too. Cars electronics. The real game changer is its focus on technology and supply chain resilience. The agreement sets a framework for joint research and development. Artificial intelligence, 6G telecommunications, next-generation semiconductors. It combines China's investment capital with South Korea's innovation. One major component, a priority logistics network. Animated map showing new direct shipping and rail lines between major Chinese and South Korean industrial cities, bypassing traditional Pacific routes. Shenzhen, Shanghai, Ulsan, Busan. The goal, critical components like advanced memory chips reach Chinese assembly plants fast. Samsung, memory chips. SK Hynix, memory chips, without touching a port in a third country. This reduces costs. This cuts shipping times. This removes the possibility of interference, namely the United States. The pact also allows settling trade in their own currencies. Chinese yuan, South Korean won. This challenges the dominance of the US dollar. Imagine the global supply chain as a massive network of highways. For the past 50 years, many of the main arteries have run through the United States. A microchip might be designed in California, manufactured in Taiwan, manufactured in South Korea, then shipped back to the US, final assembly into a phone, final assembly into a car. This new Korea-China pact essentially builds a superhighway that bypasses American routes. Flowchart. Old complex chain with US versus new direct Korea-China chain. It creates a direct, high-speed lane between South Korea and China. Map zoom on Seoul-Shanghai lane. This fundamentally alters global trade flow, leaving American ports on the sidelines, leaving logistics companies on the sidelines, leaving workers on the sidelines. Let's look at a concrete example. The EV industry. EV battery components from South Korea. Raw materials processed in China. Assembly expertise from both countries. Under the old system, parts crossed the Pacific multiple times. Under the new pact, Hyundai sources battery cells from LG Chem. Cells assembled into battery packs in a China joint venture factory. Battery packs installed into cars bound for the global market, all inside a closed-loop system. The process becomes faster, cheaper, and independent of American oversight. Donald Trump's reaction to the Korea-China pact was exactly what you would expect. Swift, loud, and deeply personal. Within an hour of the news breaking, his social media feed erupted. He labeled the deal a stab in the back and a betrayal of the highest order. South Korea, a country he has long argued benefits from American military protection without paying its fair share. For Trump, this isn't just a matter of economics. It's a direct challenge to his authority and his worldview. His entire political brand is built on the idea that he is the master dealmaker who can bend other nations to America's will. This pact demonstrates a world where that is no longer necessarily true. In a series of rapid-fire posts, Trump accused the Biden administration of being asleep at the wheel, allowing China to run circles around us. He immediately connected the deal to his own trade policies, claiming this would have never happened under my watch. He reminded his followers of his tariffs on Chinese goods. He reminded his followers of his tough negotiations with South Korea over defense cost sharing. In his mind, his confrontational approach kept allies and adversaries in line. He sees this new agreement as proof that a less aggressive posture from Washington is interpreted as weakness, emboldening others to act against American interests. His narrative is simple: strength works, diplomacy failed. The former president's concern goes beyond just wounded pride. He understands what this pact means for American leverage. It's easy to get lost in the high-level talk of geopolitics and supply chains, but what does this Korea-China deal actually mean for regular people in America? The effects could ripple out and touch many aspects of daily life. For American workers, particularly in manufacturing and technology sectors, this is a significant threat. Think about a factory in Ohio that makes specialized parts for semiconductors. If Samsung and other Korean giants start sourcing similar parts from new factories in China as part of this deal, that Ohio factory could lose its biggest customer. That means layoffs and economic hardship for an entire community. The pact could also affect the prices and availability of consumer goods. In the short term, a more efficient supply chain between Korea and China might lead to cheaper electronics, TVs, smartphones for everyone. But there's a long-term risk. If this new economic bloc becomes dominant, it could reduce competition. Consider a small American startup that has designed an innovative new smart home device. To get it built, they likely rely on a complex global supply chain, sourcing chips, plastics with final assembly in China. This new pact could prioritize larger, established players within the Korea-China network, making it harder and more expensive for smaller outside companies to get the components they need. To truly understand why this Korea-China pact is so different, it helps to compare it to the trade agreements the United States has traditionally led. For decades, US-led deals like the North American Free Trade Agreement, Trans-Pacific Partnership, TPP, were designed with America at the center. They were like a hub-and-spoke system, with Washington as the hub and other partner countries as the spokes. Side-by-side comparison graphic. These agreements promoted free trade, but they also embedded American standards on labor, environmental protection, and intellectual property. They were tools to export not just goods, but also American values and influence. The TPP, which Donald Trump pulled the US out of in 2017, is a perfect example. It was an ambitious deal involving 12 countries around the Pacific Rim, pointedly excluding China. A primary goal of the TPP was to create a trading bloc that could serve as a counterweight to China's growing economic power. The new Korea-China agreement is built on a completely different philosophy. It is not a broad, multilateral agreement designed to set global rules. Instead, it is a narrow, strategic, and deeply integrated bilateral pact focused on specific goals: technological self-sufficiency and supply chain security. Its purpose is purely transactional and pragmatic. It's about building a resilient economic fortress for two. The announcement of the Korea-China Pact has sent ripples across the globe, forcing nations to re-evaluate their own positions in this shifting landscape. In Japan, a key American ally and a historic rival of both China and Korea, the news was met with deep concern. Japanese officials are now facing immense pressure to respond. Do they double down on their security alliance with the United States, or do they seek a similar economic arrangement with China to avoid being left behind? Japanese corporations, which compete directly with South Korean giants like Samsung and Hyundai. In Europe, the reaction has been more mixed. Some leaders in Brussels see this as further evidence of the world splintering into competing blocs and have renewed calls for European strategic autonomy. They argue that Europe, like China and the US, must build its own independent capabilities in technology and defense. Developing nations in Southeast Asia and Africa are watching with keen interest. For years, their main choice was between aligning with the US-led Western Bloc. This new pact presents a potential third way. Countries like Vietnam or Indonesia might see the Korea-China model as an attractive template for their own development, potentially leading to a series of similar bilateral deals that further fragment the global economy. The United States now stands at a critical crossroads, and the path it chooses in the wake of this Korea-China Pact will have consequences for generations. The immediate risks are clear and substantial. A further erosion of the American manufacturing base, a loss of high-paying tech jobs, a diminished ability to influence global events. However, with great risk comes great opportunity. This shock could serve as the catalyst America needs to get its own house in order. It could spark a new wave of investment in domestic manufacturing, research, and development. Policies aimed at reshoring critical industries, like semiconductor fabrication and pharmaceutical production, could gain newfound urgency. This could be a moment for the US to rebuild its industrial commons, focusing on innovation and workforce training to ensure it remains a leader in the technologies of the future. Ultimately, the future is not yet written. The decisions made in Washington in the coming months will determine whether this moment is remembered as the beginning of American decline or the dawn of an American renewal.